We have been studying from a book on the life of a man named Job. And in this story of this man's life, whose name is Job, the inspired writer gives us an advantage that Job or any of his friends does not have. And we get to see the actual reason why Job is undergoing such tribulation. And the question was asked, well, what's different about Elihu? Why is God not angry with Elihu when he was angry with Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar? And to answer that question, and again we've been looking at, I'm gonna back us up just a bit, and I'm gonna show you the difference. I'm gonna talk about some things we talked about a little bit on last week, but I'm gonna show you from a different translation. But what I want us to realize about the book of Job, and oftentimes why I think it gets confused, because the Bible is the inspired word of God. And Job's dialogue with his friends take up a large portion of the book of Job. But we have to understand that really these are just some friends of Job who come to sit down and talk with Job. And these are not dumb men, they're wise men, they're religious men. But they operate from a faulty premise. And they believe that since Job is undergoing such great calamity, that something must be wrong. Job had to do something to warrant this kind of trouble in his life. And the book of Job, the thing that makes it so beautiful is that it teaches us that that is not the case. It also tells us that no matter how righteous a man may be, he can never be too righteous, that he does not have to undergo the trials and difficulties in life. All of our faith must be tested. And we can see that in this life of Job, that his faith is being tested. Now understand, Job's friends, just like many of us, they don't have any idea of what this cause is. And that's the point that Elihu was going to make. They never answered Job. They're saying to Job, Job, you had to do something wrong. Say, there's no way you're going through all this calamity and you hadn't committed some sin. And Job is saying, but I hadn't did anything wrong. I don't know what I did wrong. He said, you know me. He says, if you know something I did wrong, and I'm doing something wicked, you tell me what it is. They never give Job an answer. They just condemn him. So you had to. Elihu looks at that and he makes it, and he says, wait a minute, that's wrong. He gets angry with Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar because they never give Job an answer. And when Eliphaz comes to realize as a young man, he says, wait a minute, there's an answer in all of this. You know, they're trying to say, and matter of fact, they give off, and I'm going to show you this in a minute. They leave off and they say, well, wait a minute. Ain't no sense in us keep talking with Job. Because no matter what we say, Job just ain't going to listen. He going to still try to tell us he ain't do nothing wrong, and we just going to leave God to judge him. But Eliphaz says, wait a minute, there's an answer in this, all of this. A person doesn't have to necessarily be done something wrong. Okay? So Eliphaz is going to address that. But this is what I want us to see and get as we look at some of this. Who can know the mind of God? And this is one of the things that we learn as we look at this scripture. Because God, and this is why he tells Job, he says, where were you? Who was there to counsel God? In the beginning, when God had no one to consult with, he consulted with himself. You see that? The great Elohim consulted with himself because there was none in which he could counsel, because he was before all things, and by him does all things consist. So see, when he asked Job the questions, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, he's saying, how can you tell me, Job, I don't know how to do what I'm doing? Who can tell me, Job, how to do my business when I am the one that put it all in motion? You see that? So he says, can't nobody tell me how to do what I know how to do when everything does what I want it to do the way I want it to do it. And nobody consulted with me. Where were you, Joe? See, and that's the premise now. The point is, and this is where Elihu does a little bit different. See, he doesn't necessarily know the mind of God. And I'll show you the scriptures for that when I'm talking about it. But there's one thing he does know. He knows God. And that's a key for us when we're undergoing trials and difficulties in life. We don't have to really know why. And see, that's one thing we're always looking for. We want to look and see why. Huh? But let me ask you this question. I got a teacher sitting right here. When you was in school, your teacher gave you a book. And you were supposed to study that book, right? And she gives you a test on what's in that book, right? Now, if she told you what was going to be on the test, it would pretty much invalidate the test, wouldn't it? Because you see, it's some other stuff that you got to read in this book. Your understanding of how to use what you learn is in the book. And it's necessary for you to understand what's in the book in order to pass the test. If they tell you what's on the test, you'll cheat. And this is my point. God often does not tell us. He never tells us really why we're going through what we're going through until we get to the end. See, we can see it on the other side. But if we knew at the beginning of the trial what the trial was for, it would invalidate the trial. See, God is testing us to see if we know how to apply what's in the book. You got me? See, so it's our responsibility to study the book, to learn how to properly apply it, so that when we get in the test, in the midst of the trial, we know what we ought to do and how we ought to do it. That's the purpose of the test. So why are we always looking and saying, why? Huh? All we have to know is like Elihu, all we have to know is who our God is. And if we know him, then we know we can trust in him. And if we trust in him, we already halfway through the trial. But see, we got to know what's in the book. See, when we say trust him, you can't trust in what you don't know. You got me? So we got to first know him, and that's who he is. He's the Word, right? And I'm going to show you what Paul said in a minute. So this is why, again, our study is so important. But the book of Job actually kind of shows us that there's no way we can know the mind of God, but all we got to do is like Elihu. See, Elihu says it's got to be a reason to answer to this, because I know God. And I know God is not unjust. So what are you saying, Brother Wilson? I'm saying to you, whatever trial you go through, you can rest assured that if you know God, if you know who he is, that God is looking out for your best interests. God is trying to make you better. That's all we have to know. And if you know that and you know you can trust in God, then just follow him in the midst of the trial. And we'll come out on the other side. All right. Let me show you a few scriptures. Apostle Paul said in Romans, "Oh, the depth of the riches of both the wisdom and the knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out. For who hath known the mind of the Lord, or who hath been his counselor?" Let me ask you, let me show you something. How could Joseph have known that the dream that he received had to do with a promise that God made to his great-grandfather before his grandfather was born? How could Joseph know that a coat of many colors that he received from his father would cause his brothers to be jealous and envious of him? How could Joseph know that by revealing his dream, which he received from God, to his brethren, that they would sell him into bondage? How could Joseph know that him being sold into bondage in Egypt was all of God's plan to save his father's seed and the entire family of Jacob in Egypt? See, he couldn't know that ahead of time. What I'm trying to get you to see is Job doesn't know what's going on. Eliphaz don't know what's going on. Bildad don't know what's going on. Zophaz don't either. Neither does Elihu. But Elihu says one thing: I know God. So Elihu comes on the scene and he makes defense of God. And he rebukes Job and his friends. He tells them all of y'all got something wrong. You see, I know God. And God is not like that. And this is what we need to know. But let me show you something. Look at what the Apostle Paul said in Corinthians and Philippians. He said, "Who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him?" He says, "But we have the mind of Christ." Well, what is this mind of Christ? The mind of Christ is what Paul said in Philippians chapter 2, 5, and 8. He said, "Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. What are you saying, Brother Wilson? I'm saying that, see, that's all we need to know. No, or that's all we need to have is the mind of Christ in us, so that we'll humble ourselves before God in obedience. Notice what Moses said in Deuteronomy. Moses says the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us. Now he's talking in a different era, but that's still applicable, isn't it? And to our children forever, that we may follow all the words of his law. So what are you saying? I'm saying that God has revealed to us that which we need to know. Right? And there are going to be some secret things that we don't know. But we don't have to know. You with me? See, so what Brother Wilson is trying to tell you in your days walking, what I hope you glean from Job, is that we don't have to know. Quit looking for why and just be obedient. That's all we got to know. Now, look at what Elihu says. And this is from the NIV. He says, so these three men stopped answering Job, because that he was righteous in his own eyes. And this is what from the men's perspective, right? He says, but Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite of the family of Ram, became very angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. Because Job's friends keep insisting that he must have done something wrong, right? And we've talked about this. Job hadn't done nothing wrong, and that's all he knows. His integrity is being challenged, right? And since his integrity is being challenged, Job gets arrogant in the defense of his integrity. Because he just knows, all he knows is that he hadn't done nothing wrong. And now he believes that if something had to happen, and this is the premise of his friend's argument, and it also, you can see it's a bit part of Job's philosophy, because now, since he's gone through these calamities, and he and his friends are of this perception that something must have happened in order for him to be going through this, Job is saying, well, if something had to happen for me to go through this, then I'm being treated unfairly, because I hadn't done anything. Now, still, even in that, that's an overstatement, right? Because we know what the Bible says, right? All have sinned, right? And fallen short of the glory of God. Okay, but still, okay, I'm just rolling you with the story. So now, this is the point, and this is what all of us need to know. And this is why I make the point earlier, that it don't matter how righteous we think we live. You're not above persecution. And in fact, like Gary always quotes, those who live godly, right, shall suffer persecution. So here we see him very angry with Job for justifying himself. And he says he was also angry with his three friends, because they found no answer or no way to refute Job, and yet had condemned him. Now Elihu waited before speaking to Job, because they were older than he, but when he saw that the three men had nothing more to say, his anger was aroused. In other words, he's saying, what? Is that it? That's all these wise men or these old men got? Is that Job had to do something wrong? And that's all they got? So he said, Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, said, I am young in years, and you are old. That is why I was fearful, not daring to tell you what I know. He says, I thought age would speak, and advanced years should teach wisdom. But it is the Spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives them understanding. So he knows understanding comes from God, right? And the Bible tells us, right? If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, right? He gives it liberally. And in fact, the context of when James makes that statement is in the midst of a trial. James said, if you've been tempted, if you need some wisdom, you ask God. If you need to know what you need to do, you need to know how to live your life, Ask God. He said God gives liberally. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to do nothing. You can't just think it's coming by osmosis. But if you pick up this book and you pray earnestly and you study it, God will give you knowledge and wisdom. He says, therefore I say, listen to me. I too will tell you what I know. I waited while you spoke. I listened to your reasoning while you were searching for words. I gave you my full attention, but not one of you has proved Job wrong. None of you answered his arguments. Y'all didn't tell Job, y'all didn't prove Job wrong. Y'all just keep singing back and forth. And this is why I say a large portion of the book of Job is caught up in just this gambling. Okay, and look at what Elihu just told you about all that garbling they did. For all those chapters in the book of Job, just going back and forth, back and forth. All is just garble. They don't really know what they're talking about. And that's my point. See, we have an advantage. And that's the glory and the beauty, in my personal humble opinion, of the book of Job, is that the inspired writer gives us up front what the deal is. And since we see what's happening in the life of Job, we shouldn't have to worry so much about what's going on with us, because we can see from just that opening, that viewport we have in the window, that the devil is trying to destroy us. Do not say, we have found wisdom. Let God, not a man, refute him. And this is what they were saying. They're saying, okay, well, we just going to let God deal with it. He said, no, don't y'all think y'all done got smart. And y'all done figured it all out. And the only thing that's wrong is that Job just too hard-headed. He said, no, there's some other stuff that can go on. I'm going to show you what Elihu said. He says, but Job has not marshaled his words against me. He says, so I won't answer him with your arguments. In other words, I'm not going to keep telling Job that, Job, you must have done something wrong in order for you to suffer this calamity. But he is going to tell Job he did something wrong. And it's going to be what we already talked about. You didn't justify God. But instead, you chose to try to justify yourself. And that was wrong, Job. Now, he says, they are dismayed and have no more to say. Words have failed. Must I wait now that they are silent? Now that they stand there with no reply? In other words, they didn't say all they're going to say. He says, nah, even though I didn't show you my respect as a young man, he said, I ought to be able to speak now. In other words, he's saying, is it all right if I speak now? Huh? You guys done had y'all shot, right? Y'all didn't answer Job. But now, since y'all ain't got nothing else to say and y'all just standing around, he says, let me talk. Now, is it okay if I take my turn? That's roughly what he's saying. Now, I too will have my say. I too will tell what I know, for I am full of words, and the Spirit within me compels me. This young man says, I almost can't sit. I can't hardly stand here. He almost testifying like Jeremiah, right? Jeremiah says, like fire, shut up in my bones. That's what this man is saying. He's saying, I can't stand here any longer and listen to you guys go back and forth. He says, I'm like a bottle up wine. Like new skins, I'm just ready to burst. You see that? That's what I tell you about the poetry. See, them guys, they be. He can't just say, I'm anxious to talk. He got to say, I'm like some new wine that's filled up the skin. I'm about to burst. I just got to let it out. I can't hold it no more. I must speak and find relief. I must open my lips and reply. Now notice what he says here. I will show no partiality, nor will I flatter anyone. I'm not going to speak flattery to Job because Job's got this status or had a status. I'm not going to talk nice to you because you're older than me, or maybe perhaps because you got some status or something greater than me. Reminds me of Timothy when Timothy says, let no man despise your youth, right? So he says, I'm not going to show no partiality, for if I were skilled in flattery, my maker would soon take me away. You see that? He says, God would hold me accountable. If I didn't speak the truth to you, and I withheld my tongue and showed you flattery, he says, my maker would do away with me. In other words, I wouldn't be satisfied to God in what I do. Now, so what does that tell us? Can't show partiality, right? Job 33, 1-7, he says, but now, Job, listen to my words. He says, I want you to pay attention to everything I tell you, Job. He said, listen carefully. I'm about to open my mouth. My words are on the tip of my tongue. Now, he could have just went on and start talking, right? But anyway, but he letting Job know, I'm about to get ready to speak, Job, and I want you to listen real close. My words come from an upright heart. My lips sincerely speak what I know. The Spirit of God has made me. The breath of the Almighty gives me life. Answer me then. If you can, stand up and argue your case before me. In other words, he says, Job, I'm going to tell you with an honest heart. He says, and I'm going to speak sincerely. He says, but I want you to tell me, Job, I'm going to give you a chance to reply to everything I say and give me your answer. So I'm going to tell you what I saw or what I heard, because he's going to say, I'm not going to talk about what I think. He says, I'm going to basically tell you what I heard. So he says, I am the same as you in God's sight. I too am a piece of clay. No fear of me should alarm you, nor should my hand be heavy upon you. See, and what he's saying in all of this is that sincere lips and upright heart. He said, because I recognize, Job, I'm just like you. Isn't that what the Apostle Paul says in Galatians? I believe it's chapter 6. He says, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness. So notice what he says. Job, I'm just like you. I'm a piece of clay too. So that's why you shouldn't be afraid of me, Job, because I'm not going to attack you, okay, from the position of your friends was. And like I told you about his friends, remember, his friends is attacking from some of the stuff that they're saying, they're condemning themselves and really all of humanity. Because no man, if God was just, no man could stand. So, he says in 33, 8, 9, he says, but I have said in my heart, but you have said in my hearing, I heard the very words, I am pure, I have done no wrong, I am clean and free from sin. He says, this is what I heard. Now, understand context. Job said that. Now, Job is not saying, nor is Elihu accusing him of saying, I've never sinned my whole life. And that's not what Job said. What Job was saying was in the context of his friends condemning him, right? Saying that he had done something wrong in order to suffer those calamities. He's saying, I didn't do nothing wrong. But this is what Elihu going to hit him with. Now, see, this is what we know, too, from Romans 3 and Romans 3:23. There's none righteous, no, not one. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And then it's in Job 33, here's Elihu. He says, yet God has found fault with me. He considers me his enemy. This is Job still talking, right? And this is what he's saying. Well, this is what Elihu was saying he heard from Job. He says, I am pure, I have done no wrong, I am clean and free from sin. He says, yet God has found fault with me, right? He says, he considers me his enemy. And this is what Job believes, like I said, because God has moved the hedge, right? So he thinks that God considers him his enemy. Now, let me ask you this. If God considers Job his enemy, right, doesn't that make God an enemy to Job? Huh? Because he's saying God's trying to destroy him, right? So if God thinks of Job as an enemy and he's trying to destroy him, then God is Job's enemy. You know, I'm just trying to get you to see. When you say some things, what you got to do is consider the full ramifications of what you say. Anyway, notice what Job said. God considers me his enemy. He says he fashions my feet in shackles, and he keeps close watch on all my paths. Notice what Job is saying. Job is saying God he's keeping a close watch on me. He thinks I'm his enemy, and he's after me, but he got my feet fastened in shackles. I can't run. He says, there's nowhere I can go. Where can I go and hide? God got my feet fastened. So he's still whining, right? But anyway, this is him recounting. This is what he was recounting what he heard that Job said. And he's going to tell Job, what we say, Job, if I'm saying something wrong, Job, then answer. Tell me where I'm wrong. Now, it's interesting to know that Job argues with Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar the whole way through. He never speaks a word to Elihu. Never. Job doesn't open his mouth. And what I'm trying to get us to see is there's a different approach with Elihu. What are you saying, Brother Wilson? I'm saying that we ought to be able to learn something about our approach when we approach a brother that's in sin. You see, from Elihu, he puts himself right there with Job. He says, Job, I don't want to accuse you unfairly. I'm here to just talk about what I heard you say. I'm not telling you something third party. This is what I heard you say, Job. And if I got it wrong, tell me. Let's discuss it. Make your case. So Job never argues with him because Job now, he's not being assaulted. And remember I told you can tell what a man values. And we found out earlier that Job values his integrity. And when his integrity is under assault by his friends, he defends it. So much so he goes too far across the line. But now he has a young man that approaches him, but he does not yet assault his character. He talks to Job like he's a person. So he says, but I tell you, in this you are not right, Job, for God is greater than any mortal. He says, why do you complain to him that he responds to no one's words? And notice what Elihu is going to say. Elihu is going to reveal how God speaks. He says, for God does speak now one way, now another, though no one perceives it. In other words, God talks to people in different ways, but nobody's listening. And we talked about that last week. Now, one way he says God talks, he says is in dreams and visions. And we know what the Hebrew writer says, right? That God, who in sundry times and divers manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. And that's, again, I'm going to go right back and tell you that's why we got to study that book. Okay? But notice he says that God speaks to people in dreams and visions. So he says in a dream and a vision of the night when deep sleep falls upon people as they slumber in their beds, he may speak in their ears and terrify them with warnings. to turn them from wrongdoing and keep them from pride. And I gave you the example last week of Pharaoh, right? How God sent Pharaoh a dream. We can go to a bunch of people, Nebuchadnezzar, and we can just go right on down the line, right? Who people God showed dreams to in order to get them to move in the right direction, right? To turn them from wrongdoing and to keep them from their pride, to preserve them from the pit and their lives from perishing by sword. So God does all kinds of things, all right, in order to move man. Now this is what I want us to see. God speaks to people in provinces. Now, provinces are really just events by things that occurred in our lives. So God is speaking to us by events that happen in our lives. He says, now this is what Job is going to use the province of sickness. He's not Job, but Elihu is going to use the province of sickness. He says somebody may be chasing on a bed of pain with constant distress in their bones, so that their body finds food repulsive. And he sounds a lot like he's talking about some of the things that Job's going through. And their souls loathe the choicest meal. Their flesh wastes away to nothing, and their bones, once hidden, now stick out. They draw near to the pit, and their life to the messengers of death. But watch this right here. He says, yet, if there is an angel at their side. Now that's in the NIV. If you look at the King James simply just says messengers. But what I want you to know is who those messengers are. But let me go through this first. He says, yes, if an angel, yet if there is an angel at their side, a messenger, 1 out of 1,000, sent to tell them how to be upright. He says, and he is gracious to that person and says to God, spare them from going down to the pit. I have found a ransom for them. Let their flesh be renewed like a child's, and let them be restored in the days of their youth. Now, if we look at the book of Revelation, John says that he was caught up in the Spirit on the Lord's day, right? And he heard a voice say unto him, the things which you see, John, I want you to write them and put them in a book. But he says he turned around to see the voice, and he saw 7 golden candlesticks. And in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks, he saw somebody that looks like the Son of God. And he said the one that looked like the Son of God, he had in his hand 7 stars. And then he tells us later that the 7 candlesticks are the 7 churches in Asia. And the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. In other words, the ministers or the messengers of God in the 7 churches. So what are you saying, Brother Wilson? I'm saying that there's 2 things right here. Number 1, again, what the Hebrew writer says, God is speaking to us, right? Through here. So we got one messenger right here, and that's the Son of God, right? But the Son of God has those working for him. 7 stars. There's your men right there. When those men come to you, and they tell you what you need to do to get your life right, you need to listen. And be grateful that these men have come to you and given you instruction sufficient to straighten out your life and save your soul from certain death. So this is what Elijah says, if somebody comes along and tell a man, then perhaps he will be saved. Right? Then that person can pray to God and find favor with him. And they will see God's face and shout for joy, and he will restore them to full well-being. And they will go to others and say, I have sinned, I have perverted what is right, but I did not get what I deserve. You see the difference in his philosophy of how God looks? But now he's not necessarily accusing Job. He's just saying this is one of the ways that God communicates. You see his approach here? He's not saying that, Job, this is you. He's saying this is a way that God communicates to people. Now, I don't know, Job, if you fall in this category or not. But you see what I'm saying? But this is what God does. Now, God has delivered me from going down to the pit, and I shall live to enjoy the light of life. God does all these things to a person twice, even 3 times, to turn them back from the pit, that the light of life may shine on them. You see that? So notice what he's showing. He's showing God has mercy. Well, the other guy said, nah, that's, you be swatted like a moth. Right? And this is why God is angry with them, because they did not speak accurately about him. But Eliphaz says God shows mercy, even in a person in a bad situation, right? And even if they've done something wrong. Ecclesiastes 7:14, notice what the ecclesiastical writer says, the ever-wise preacher Solomon. Notice what Solomon says. He says, when times are good, be happy. See, we got a problem with this. But he says when times are good, you ought to be happy. Let me tell you, look at what Solomon's saying here. He says, but when times are bad, he says, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. What are you saying, Solomon? Solomon's saying you don't know. You say today it might be good, but tomorrow you don't know what's coming. No man knows his future. So he's saying, while you got it good, be happy. You see that? See, but so many times with us, we're too busy in the moment when things are going good. We're worrying about something that already happened. It's past, and we can't let go of the past. And the past is ruining the future because we're holding on to the past. Solomon says, if the times are good, be happy. Because you don't know. See, tomorrow, may not be a happy day. Now, see, I think if we think like that, but we can rejoice every day we get up and things ain't bad. Because you got plenty of times you're going to run into where you ain't going to be able to rejoice. So enjoy the ones that you can. Job 33. He says, pay attention, Job, and listen to me. He says, be silent, and I will speak. If you have anything to say, answer me. Speak up. He said, I want to vindicate you. Now, I'm not here to destroy you, Job. If I'm saying something wrong, let me know. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to vindicate you. So if you say something that I got it wrong and you right, then hey, He says, but if not, listen to me. Be silent. Say, I'm going to teach you wisdom. This is a young man, and my time is far spent. But I'm going to squeak through this next slide. Elihu begins to rebuke Job for justifying himself and not God. Then Elihu says, hear my words, you wise men. Listen to me, you men of learning. For the ear tests words as the tongue tastes food. You see that? He say, my ear, or words are to my ear just like food is to my tongue. He says, so he said, let us discern for ourselves what's right. It's like when you're tasting that food, right? You roll it around in your mouth, right? And you try to say, yeah, okay, this tastes like chicken. That's what we always say. Anyway, nonetheless. So Job say words are like that. That we got to discern for ourselves what is right, and that's my point. See, all we have to know is what's right. Even in the midst of a trial, all we have to do is know what's right and what's wrong and follow right. Anyway, he says, let us learn together what is good. Job says, I am innocent, but God denies me justice. Although I am right, I am considered a liar. Although I am guiltless, his arrows inflicts an incurable wound. Is there anyone like Job who drinks scorn like water? He keeps company with evildoers. He associates with the wicked. For he says, there is no profit in trying to please God. And this is what he's saying. I'm going to end with this. He's not saying that Job actually hangs out with evildoers. But what he's saying is by what Job said. He said, Job, you said that there is no profit. That's why he says, for he says. You see that? You said, Job, that there is no profit in trying to please God. Because he's just going to crush you anyway. Well, he says, that's what the wicked say, Job. If you're going to say or speak like that, then you're keeping company with the wicked. You with me? Because that's what they say. You say a man of God can't say that. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. Because that's what the wicked say. The wicked say that there is no profit in trying to please God. But we should know that our reward comes not so much in this life, but in the life that is to come. Thank you. I've enjoyed the class. I hope I've been able to make the things in the discussion with Eli here a little bit more simpler or plain for you to understand. Thank you.